Okay.
Well, they're relatives with my mom, so the idea is to spend winter downstairs. It may be I might have to go to Bangalore for a while if some work comes, Delhi, a month over there, spend a month in Cal at home. But
So you now shifted to Ladakh, is what you're saying. You will be sort of.
I'm still terrified to say that, but yeah, I'm renting a place, and I saw a place today. Renting a place. There's a lockdown and curfew right now, half day.
Right.
So renting a place, and my saman will come end of May as soon as roads are stably open. And a small pad, I mean, a kitchen.
Brilliant.
And a thing.
Well done.
Thank you, Rijit. And I don't think location matters much. In fact, it's the positive location.
Right.
Delhi, some urgent meetings, and when we have, it's literally, I can see you for tea time. So you're not cut off, and I have some very good friends here. Apart from Delhi-based work, which all of this, it's fantastic. So I'm just adjusting in my head that this is home.
Great, very good.
I feel very secure, and in these difficult times, it's every day we're hearing of passing away. And I'm saying that we must go beyond just surviving and sharing difficult news, and we must also find ways to cheer each other up, send positive vibrations.
Absolutely.
So I want to be
and we hope today's meeting will cheer us all up.
Do you know the one thing?
It's great to see a lot of friends have already started to join.
Yeah,
including Sean, who was joined all the way from the US and in an absolutely ungodly hour. So
ungodly hour.
Welcome, Sean, to your first meeting. Ritu, welcome back. Hi, Kinjal. These are all colleagues from the VSS organizations community that we've been working with Viraf. And Viraf is a friend, and you will hear from him soon about business and human rights, which is the topic of the day. So we'll wait. Hi, Frank. Good afternoon.
The usual mistake. Hi, Richard. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Hi, everyone.
We will wait for a few more minutes. Some more colleagues are likely to join. So we'll give it another couple of minutes, and then we will start the proceedings. And it's always good to have the face in front of the screen. So all of you who have the bandwidth and can turn on your video cameras, please do that. Hi, Ritu. Good to see you. Great. So we'll wait for a few more minutes, and then we will start the seventh meeting of the VSS Collaboration India.
We seldom get to see each other, so it's good to switch on.
Yes, absolutely, yes. Hi, Kamal. Good morning.
Hi, everyone. Good to see some faces finally.
I know.
Hi, Kamal. How have you been?
Hi, Nandini. I'm good.
Very nice.
My apologies, Ritu. I'm really terrible with my WhatsApp. I saw your message, and I will get back.
No problem. I hope you're well, Kamal.
Yes, all good in the hills. Never got back after coming here last year. So absolutely isolated in my small village.
So we've got a few hilly people also. Viraf is in Ladakh. Kamal is in just outside of Dharamshala. So that's great. Good to see you, Ranjit. Hi, Kinjal. Good afternoon. Good to see you again.
Hi, Rijit. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Hi, Ritu. Ashish is joining. Hi, Ashish.
Hi, Ashish.
Hi, Kamal.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon, Ashish. Hi, Suhasini. great that you're able to join us. Good to see you after long.
Hey, yeah, how are you doing?
Very well.
Nice to see you.
Now we know what you've been up to. All those books behind you.
Oh, I'm hijacking Uncle's chamber. Like,
Okay, great. Okay, great. So maybe we can start in the interest of time. Though we have we've blocked 2 hours, and we'll let colleagues join in as they do. So a warm welcome to all of you on behalf of CRB and my colleagues Nandini and Shreya to this the 7th meeting of the VSS Collaboration India. For those of you who are new, this is basically an initiative that we started off in January 2019, through which we bring together a bunch of voluntary sustainability standards organizations together to explore potential possibilities to collaborate on areas of common interest. There has been a fair bit of conversation globally about the need for VSS organizations to collaborate. And we felt in 2019 that it could be a good experiment perhaps to see whether we are interested and ready to collaborate amongst each other. And I'm really happy, CRB is very happy that we've continued to grow this community. Now we have 22 standards organizations which are part of this initiative to sort of come together once every 3-4 months and talk about and discuss particular issue or issues of common interest. The subject of business and human rights, which is the subject of today's meeting, is a very, very critical issue, especially now as we are looking at, and the world is really hoping for resilient and sustainable recovery from the COVID-19 situation that we have. As far as the UN Forum on Sustainability Standards is concerned, sustainability standards organizations are those which that work to keep the workers safe, protect the communities, engage with the marginalized and sometimes even with the indigenous population to protect their rights on natural resources. So we felt that the VSS community really provides a great opportunity to businesses as their partners, the VSS, the organization, business organizations that the VSS work with, to promote and uphold the principles of business and human rights. There is enough evidence globally, and of course, there is also some in India, including across many of your organizations, how the businesses that you work with have tried to deal with the issues of gender equality, underage or child labor, issues pertaining to small holders, interest, working conditions, so on and so forth. At CRB, we also have an active business and human rights program, and we've been, which is being led by my colleague here, Nandini, and my colleague Shreya is also part of that team, and you will hear soon from Nandini about the work that we are doing on the business and human rights vertical. But it's really to highlight the importance of a conversation, not just a conversation on business and human rights, but also action, and how adopting a proactive strategy on to address, minimize, and mitigate human rights related issues can be an important pathway for businesses to contribute to the kind of recovery that we are looking at, and of course the overall sustainable development goals. Given the current situation that we are in, and also some of the developments that have happened at the level of the government of India. And we've got one of the most eminent experts in Viraf Mehta, who I'll introduce, in due course, to talk about these developments of the national guidelines on the responsible business conduct, and also the upcoming National Action Plan on Business and Human Rights. We felt this was the right opportunity for us to have a discussion within this community, to see how the VSS organizations can start to engage more proactively and sort of document and even advocate on business and human rights related activities and actions and good practices. You would recall that as part of this VSS community conversation, the VSS collaboration, we had established a working group, and some colleagues here were part of that working group. And the working group last September had come up with its recommendations that the opportunity for collaboration for VSS organizations using this platform lie in three distinct buckets. The first is to collaborate and engage with the policymakers on certain relevant policy issues, and that could be at the national level or the state level, or even on thematic sort of sectoral ministries, even on policy engagement. The second pillar was on capacity building, so understanding whose capacity to be built and how, and we felt that it probably would be the right thing to do for us all to come to the same level and to bring everybody to speed on the UN guiding principles on business and human rights, and also the National Action Plan for India. And that's how we felt we could start the capacity building first internally, and then we can start to engage with the organizations and the partners that we engage with through our activities. And the third part, the third bucket, is of knowledge. And this is an area where CRB has a fairly a good amount of interest, and Nandini will probably sort of expound it a little bit more. And our idea would be, if given that you are already working in this space, it might be an interesting opportunity to document some of the work in a very simple template. You don't have to, we don't expect this to be done in a very sophisticated manner, but if it can be documented in terms of some of the good practices, whether it is on advocacy, on practices, on action, that can also become evidence to either the policymakers or even the practitioners on how VSS sort of offers opportunity for engagement. And finally, before I sort of call the meeting open and request Nandini to come in. Of course, before that, I'd like also to maybe do a quick, since we are not too many of us, about 15 of us here, probably run a quick round of introduction before Nandini comes in. But before that, let me also indicate to you that you'll remember the last meeting that we had in September at the annual conference of CRB. We had talked about a knowledge product or a report on VSS contribution to SDGs. We had advanced to the level of starting the primary research on that project, identified a researcher, but because of the COVID situation, we felt that this would probably not be the right time. But I'm encouraged by the participation in this meeting. So therefore, I'm happy to share with you that we will start the primary interviews with all of you. So we have about 22 VSS organizations. So we will be reaching out to you with a simple set of questions, and we will set up a time that is conducive for you to have a conversation. We have a researcher who's already engaged with us to undertake this research together with me, and we will come to you in due course. So on that note, once again, thank you very much for coming to this meeting. I know it's a difficult time, so really grateful to you for making time. And my colleagues, Sia has already started recording this meeting, so this will be available for those colleagues who are not able to make it. So this is going to be, feel free. We are going to record this meeting, but this is only for internal purposes and to be shared only within this community of the VSS organizations. If you feel that there is something that you would not like to talk about, and be quoted on, please let us know. Of course, there will also be a report which will be prepared and circulated to all of you and others who are part of this community. So on that note, let me just stop here and with a warm welcome and quickly maybe give you 30 seconds each to introduce each one of you. So maybe I can start with you, Kamal.
Yeah, thanks.
Rajat, you should always start with female. SDG 5, women first, please.
Well,
Yes.
I don't know. I have a difference of opinion on women first, because I think it's it's probably not the right thing to do. But anyways, maybe Kamal, because he started, and then Suhasini.
No, I'm just kidding. Just starting on a lighter note.
Yeah, very good. I like that. Thanks.
Let's represent humanity and move beyond genders is the politically correct way to put what Vijit was trying to say. Humanity first.
Okay,
so my name is Kamal. Good to reconnect with many of you here. And as Vijit said, last interaction I think we had was because of the working groups of the VSS India collaboration. So I lead the work for RSPO in India still, though we are looking for a new country head. I've also moved into a global role as Deputy Director for Market Transformation. My current focus is for India, China, and Asia Pacific to increase the demand for certified sustainable palm oil. So happy to reconnect and find any synergies as always.
Great. Thanks a lot, Kamal. Kinjal?
Myself, Kinjal. I look after Responsible Jewelry Council in India and Middle East. And, in our recent strategy, we have 3 strategies for RGC. First is definitely a member first strategy. Second is definitely, endorsing a positive change. And third is absolutely talking about sustainable development goals. And as our ED says very proudly, SDG 5 is going to be our major focus in this, coming decade of action. So, that's why I started with SDG 5. Anyone who is interested, eventually, anything on SDGs, RGC has been doing a lot on SDGs. So, I would really request you to just follow us on, whatever the social media platform. I know Ritu follows the thing, and she knows, probably much more than what I know, what my ED is doing. So that's all from my side.
Great. Thanks, Ritu.
Hello everyone, I'm Ritu Barua and I represent...
Can you speak closer to the mic? Sorry, Ritu.
I said, hello everyone, I'm Ritu Barua and I represent Bonsucro in India. Bonsucro is the sugarcane sustainability standard, it's a global standard. And Kinjal, thank you for all your kind words and all this discussion on gender equality. I mean, I really appreciate that. But yeah, we also believe in equanimity. So I think it's good to be that way. Yeah. And yes, Rijit, once again, good to, make these connections and to hear some more. Just one small thing I want to say that, as voluntary standards, we've become like custodians of a framework. And sometimes it's very important for us to be able to move beyond that a little bit and to sort of see how better we can engage on different issues. And I think keeping that in mind, I think the Center for Responsible Business provides an excellent platform. Thank you for all your efforts. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ritu. Ranjit? I'm just reading names as they appear on my screen, so please bear with me.
I am Ranjit. I work for Marine Stewardship Council, London. I represent India for them. We mainly concentrate on marine fishery certifications. Thank you.
Thanks, Ranjit. Coming all the way from Kerala, you are based out of right now?
Yes, yes.
Suhasini?
Hello, everyone. I'm Suhasini. I am the country manager for Fairway in India. Fairway is a multi-stakeholder initiative working on garment supply chain. We look at labor standards in the garment supply chain of our member brands. And we also pilot several, mostly on living wages and social dialogue, and try to share our learnings on the topics that we experiment. Thank you.
Great. Thanks a lot, Suhasini. Great to reconnect with you. If I may request Sean.
Yes, hello everybody. Sean Vries. I'm with Sustainable Electronics Recycling International. So we manage and oversee the R2 standard. I'm the R2 director. Siri is based out of the US, I should say, and it is a global standard. I myself am based in Canada.
Okay, thanks a lot for dialing in such an ungodly hour for you. So thanks again.
Thanks for letting me join.
Ganesh. Ganesh Kasigar from GOTS, you are on mute. You'll have to unmute yourself. Maybe Ganesh is having some challenges in connecting. So Archana Panda from SAI.
Hi everyone. Thanks, Rajit. So I'm Archana Panda and represent Social Accountability International. So SAI basically is the owner of the International Global Standard S8000, and I'm the lead accreditation auditor performing audits on certification bodies across the world. And of course, right now we're doing remote audits and hybrid audits as well. And also I'm looking after Indian operations and as a now training myself to be a tutor for SAI courses, the basic and advanced courses, and also looking after some of the SAI projects like supplier capacity project for the garment and apparel sector in India. So a lot of other initiatives with the SAI, and really thanks Rajit for this platform, and happy to be connected with you all. Thank you very much.
Great, thanks a lot. Ganesh, can you hear us now? You are on mute, Ganesh. You'll have to unmute yourself.
Oh yeah, now can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry, there was some technical glitch at my end, so I couldn't say anything. Yeah, but yeah, let me introduce myself. I am Ganesh Kasekar. I'm associated as a regional representative for South Asia region for the global organic textile standards, and I take care of the organic textile certification in India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka. Thank you.
Great, thanks a lot, Ganesh. Appreciate you joining us. Ashish.
Hello everyone, I'm Ashish Bhardwaj. I represent Alliance for Water Stewardship. I work for India and South Asia region. Currently, we are in the process of updating our strategy to align it more with SDGs, and also coming up with another set of standard as corporate water stewardship standard. Currently, our standards are site specific, but now we are coming up as for corporate level as well. Thank you, and please excuse me. I'm not feeling too well, so if I'll close my video and won't speak much.
That's okay. You
thanks.
take care, Ashish.
Yeah.
Amar, over to you.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. I hope I'm audible. Just had to reinstall Zoom and everything else, so I'm still struggling a little bit with the audio, but thanks. So I'm Amar Deshpande. I'm the India country manager for Forest Stewardship Council. We deal largely with forest and forestry products, the certification in the forestry management space, and then also on the chain of custody for timber, paper, packaging, and other industries. So thank you.
Great, thanks a lot, Amar, and really happy that you're able to make it for this meeting. Let me now turn over to my colleagues. And Nandini, if you can introduce yourself.
Right. Sorry. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you all for joining us today for this session. I'm sorry, I've got a little bit of a sore throat. Yes, a very warm welcome to everybody. I'm Nandini Sharma. I've been working with the Center for Responsible Business now for over 2 years. And at the organization, I'm primarily leading work on business and human rights. Been working on this agenda or on this issue for now over a decade. Public policy, governance, responsible business agenda, primarily my sort of areas of have been my areas of work. So very happy to be here with everybody and really look forward to our discussion today. Thank you.
Great, thanks a lot, Nandini. And as I said, Nandini leads the work on business and human rights at CRB, and I'm also pleased to welcome my other colleague in that team, Shreya Majumdar. Shreya, if you can introduce yourself.
Thanks, Rajit. Hi, everyone. So, like Rajit mentioned, I'm new to the business and human rights space. I've been with CRB for the past 9 months, and I work with Nandini in the business and human rights vertical.
Great, thanks a lot, Shreya. Let me now request Viraf, I should have introduced you, and I will properly, but maybe a quick word of introduction.
Thank you, Richard. Good afternoon, friends. My name is Viraf Mehta, and I've been working in the field of business sustainability for over 3 decades. About half of that directly with industry. I was with the Tata Group, and for the past 2 decades, primarily, I'm so glad he's mentioned this, that on the topic really of sustainability standards in India, particularly with business and human rights, and you'll hear a little more, so I won't say much more right now, Rajit, but
Thank you very much, Viraf, and really happy that you were able to make it. Let me also now introduce our colleague from one of our partner organizations, Friedrich Naumann Foundation, Frank Hoffman. Frank, if you can kindly introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Richard. So Frank from the Friedrich Naumann Foundation. I'm the Regional Project Manager, South Asia. We are a political foundation from Germany working primarily on the focal issues, good governance, the free market economy, human rights, and digital transformation. And with these focal areas, especially at the intersection of human rights and the free market economy, you also very quickly talk about business and human rights and sustainable business conduct. However, we are fairly new to the field and also do not really have a lot of in-house expertise. Basically, we have one full-time person in our head office in Germany working on the topic, which is why we rely a lot on the expertise of partners, and our main partner in India, and increasingly also for the entire region, South Asia, has been and will also moving forward be CRB. And I think I'll touch upon the work that we do a little later.
Great, thanks a lot, Frank, and really happy that you were able to make it. And finally, Nusrat, I see you've joined. So can you briefly introduce yourself?
Hi, Rajit. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm sorry, I would have loved to join in a more proper way, but I told Nandini this morning that I had a vaccination appointment. In fact, I have it right now. So, I'll be joining from. Thank you so much. I got lucky. I got a slot. Yes, I am working as the Business and Human Rights Specialist with the UNDP in India. And I'm happy to be here and share some of our work on the project in India and in the region and with some of our government partners. So thank you for inviting me.
Great, thanks a lot, and thanks again for and congratulations for getting the slot. We also have my colleague Sia, who's helping us with the recording and with really setting this all up. So thanks a lot, Sia, for your support. So moving on, what we will do is we will there are three or four things that we wish to do today. First of all, as I said, we would like to start with a little bit of an introduction to, the business and human rights vertical that we have at CRB and the kind of work that we are doing and going to be working, on over the next few months, years, etc. And I'll hand it over to Nandini now for taking us through what she's been up to as she develops the vertical on business and human rights. Over to you, Nandini.
Right. Thank you. Thanks a lot, Richard. I think my work mostly is made easy with the overview that you've given to our partners here. So I'll probably maybe want to start with a very key sort of a point that Richard alluded to in his address, which was really about emphasizing on the whole collaboration being the key to achieving the SDG goals, or sort of propelling the business and human rights agenda forward. And that sort of underpins the work that we do at the Center for Responsible Business, and also sort of resonates with what we endeavor to do and what we have so far achieved under the business and human rights vertical. So, given that it's business and human rights is an all-encompassing sort of by nature an all-encompassing topic, it's a fast expanding portfolio and a fast evolving portfolio, which sort of underlines the need, the necessity to sort of get all our partners to sort of work together collaboratively, deliberate on a lot of contemporary issues, and to sort of initiate action. So really moving from ambition to action is what we sort of endeavor to do, and this particular session here is one sort of a step towards in that direction. So, without further ado, it's jumping straight into, what is it that we are doing on business and human rights. So if I were to broadly, classify the work that we are doing, there are four sort of verticals. So it's basically an integrated sort of an approach, a very comprehensive and integrated approach that we've taken to, pushing and forwarding the business and human rights agenda. And it starts with, really policy. Evidence-based policy research and action, moving to, awareness generation and awareness raising, and then sort of looking at capacity development, and of course, all backed by multi-stakeholder initiatives. So maybe I'll first want to talk a little bit about the policy component, or the policy piece of work that we've been doing. The Center for Responsible Business was one of the organizations that supported the Ministry of Corporate Affairs and supported, in terms of providing secretarial support and technical and research inputs into the entire process of drafting the National Action Plan, the entire process of developing the National Action Plan on Business and Human Rights. This meant, conducting and organizing a lot of stakeholder consultations, bringing forth and bringing to the table varied perspectives, culling out insights, etc. The Center for Responsible Business was also invited to critique on the new disclosure and reporting framework. And as per the latest circular from the SEBI, it is now been mandated for the top 1,000 organizations, the new BRSR framework. So, there was inputting that Center for Responsible Business did in sort of finalizing the framework. So they're really sort of emphasizing on this particular aspect is to sort of say that we, as an organization, we are really at the intersection of, the understanding the policy frameworks and where the, in which direction the policy is heading, and also sort of, informing policies through, a very diverse and extensive network of partners that we have. So really having our ears and eyes to the ground. The idea, of course, in the coming months, once as and when the National Action Plan on Business and Human Rights gets finalized and is published, the idea will be to sort of supplement the efforts of the government in in sort of mainstreaming and in the uptake of the National Action Plan on Business and Human Rights. Be it looking at guidelines, sector specific guidances, tools, frameworks, reporting disclosures, harmonization of different frameworks that are available. So these would be some of the areas that would be critical, and these are areas that, of course, we see sort of CRB working on. Coming to the awareness generation and awareness raising component of our work. Now that is really, we feel, very fundamental to the uptake and adoption of the business and human rights agenda. And here again, the idea, and here we feel that an exchange of a platform like this, where you're exchanging ideas, where good practices are disseminated, where there are case studies that can be exchanged. I think those are fundamental, and the idea then is to really at CRB would be to really create a knowledge repository which can be widely circulated and widely disseminated among different stakeholders. And I feel here I probably take a minute to sort of say that we feel that the voluntary standards organizations have a critical and a very key role to play here. As sort of nerve centers of action on sustainability. We feel that the VSS organizations carry with themselves a lot of knowledge, and that knowledge needs to be sort of captured and widely disseminated. Moving forward to the capacity building component of our work. Now that's we feel again very critical to effective rollout and effective implementation of the tenets of and the principles of business and human rights. So really, that again is something that we see being a focus area for us, and this would mean really looking at creating modules very specific to and these may be very specific to certain sectors. They may be human rights due diligence capacity building modules are something that are an area of interest for us. So really looking at how would you guide an organization, a big organization to a small holder to an SME, how would you guide them on policy formulations? How do you sort of set targets, etc. So the entire kind of process, take them through the entire process. So really here again we feel that VSS organizations are probably the key agents, or sort of the change agents in terms of really building the right kind of capacities within organizations, within clusters, so that the business and human rights is understood in the right spirit and sort of implemented and adopted in the right manner. And of course, our forte, which is really the multi-stakeholder initiatives. And here again, I think we've, the idea really to, this, to have this conversation is to sort of sow the seed of, looking at, creating a platform where, synergies, where, ideas of collaboration, where, what, there might be areas, there might be frameworks, there might be tools that one could adapt to sort of use as maybe policy input, to use as capacity building tools. So really, through this, dialogue, through social dialoguing, through this multi-stakeholder sort of a platform, create that kind of an environment where we can sort of exchange ideas and really work on these ideas, towards creating a positive impact. So yeah, that's basically our ambition or our agenda that we've given to a mandate that we've given to ourselves, in short. I'll probably stop here now. I'm happy to maybe take on any question that that anybody might have before we move on with the meatier part of the discussion.
Thanks, Nandini. Any questions so far? Anybody would like to share anything very quickly?
Any reflections,
based on whatever
anything
you've
at all?
heard?
Okay.
Everything was crystal clear. Thank you very much.
Nandini.
Even if it isn't, I mean, I'll be happy to sort of receive ideas, and also, I mean, if there is any further sort of clarifications, happy to sort of, connect bilaterally also. So, yeah.
Sure. I think in the introduction, most of the organizations present here did mention about the interface between the work that they do and how that sort of aligns with the principles of the UN guidance principles, really, the framework of business and human rights. And who better to talk? That gives us a great segue into the next session, which is going to be where we are going to hear Viraf. Viraf Mehta. Let me introduce him properly. He did in his modesty did not introduce himself, but it'll be a disservice if I didn't. So Viraf is as he mentioned, he's been in this sector or working on sustainability and on human rights for the last three decades, and which has been it has been a very interesting mix of working with the Tata Group and also with leading NGOs working on the subject in India. Not only that, he has, because of his deep knowledge, he has been part of several national and international committees and initiatives on business and human rights. He has been engaged with the Ministry of Corporate Affairs right from the beginning of developing the national voluntary guidelines and was developing and updating the national voluntary guidelines into what you see as the national guidelines on responsible business conduct. And related to that also, the latest business responsibility and sustainability reporting framework, which was released by the Ministry of Corporate Affairs last year. And as Nandini said, which has recently, 2 days ago, been approved or been notified by SEBI to be followed by the top 1,000 companies. He's also been advising the Ministry of Corporate Affairs on the National Action Plan on Business and Human Rights, and is also associated as an associate faculty member with the Indian Institute of Corporate Affairs. So without further ado, let me hand it over to Viraf. Viraf, what we would like to do is basically, if you can take us through the whole sort of journey of of the development of this whole idea of a national action plan on business and human rights, and how that is situated and linked with the overall development of the national guidelines on responsible business conduct, and whatever else you feel is relevant to the conversation. So over to you, Viraf. You have about 20 minutes, and then we can have maybe 10 minutes of questions and answers. So over to you.
Right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for all the preceding comments, for all the introductions. I think in terms of, first of all, in terms of timeliness of these discussions, it's next month on the 11th of June that we mark the decade of the United Nations Guiding Principles in Business and Human Rights. And just to say, I was very fortunate right from almost the first year of the Ruggie mandate to be involved with the entire narrative that we now can review 10 years later. So I think from the point of view of the brief for today's discussions, I thought what I would do with the 15-20 minutes allotted to the comments that I wanted to make would be to identify some of the, I think, key pathways that will continue to guide discussions on responsible business conduct in the decades ahead. In the first instance, just to say that in 2010, because it's a sort of a decadal narrative here. It was significant because despite all the challenges, we were able to persuade the government of India finally to come up with a clear set of articulated prescriptions for what constituted responsible business. And I was one of the members at that time involved with its drafting. I would be at this point, because I've heard at least 7 or 8 times already this afternoon the word voluntary. And of course, you know, moving away from the conventional boundaries of voluntary versus mandatory type of polarized discussion sometimes. The feat here was actually, in our case, we added the word voluntary right in the beginning, only just to bring business on board. They had concerns that were legal, what was going to be binding, etc. But in terms of what Rijit has just said, we were aware that one of the biggest challenges facing us in the responsible business conduct discourse, and at a time when the UNGPs in 2011, June, were just about going to be launched to most businesses who were going to look with alarm at the words human rights. So understanding the sheer cultural change that would have to occur within business to be able to speak in terms on a human rights-based approach, I wanted to make 2 remarks. That in the first instance, when we redrafted the erstwhile 2010-11 National Voluntary Guidelines, I think to say that, first of all, the timeliness was very good because in 2009, we brought Professor Raghi to India for his Asia Regional Dialogue. It was hosted in New Delhi in February 2009. And by 10, we were mandated to draft these first guidelines. And of course, there was skepticism from civil society who said, well, although it's the first articulated prescription from the state, from the government, the words voluntary deterred most of civil society activists that we were in conversation with about the content of what would go into it. But let's remember that in 2010, ladies and gentlemen, it seemed hard to believe. We had no mechanism, not our Right to Information Act or anything else, where we could demand information on ESG issues from any business, private or public. We may have had a right to know and a right to information. So we began with a big discussion, I recall, with Professor Raghi here in India, that how can we proceed with this agenda in business and human rights when businesses only in 2011 disclose financial information in India to us as stakeholders, of course, to investors, confidentially to ministries and so forth, yes, but not in a format that you and I could decipher, not in a format that we could utilize for our own objectives in terms of the work we do for our stakeholders. So with this one trigger in mind, we actually set upon a path, and as you know, from 2012, non-financial reporting for the first time in our country was mandated by the regulator SEBI, at that time for listed companies and just 100, that's now 1,000. And for the first time after 100 years, you could argue it this way, that we found a way to leverage a voluntary standard and create out of it a mandatory reporting regime. So how voluntary are the guidelines if reporting on your performance against them, process and performance, are now mandatory? Second point would be that the introduction of human rights as a separate principle, I wish to explain this a little bit. Again, as a purist in human rights, many would argue that this is just one principle amongst 9. And I would counter this very strongly by saying that the 3 pillars of the UNGPs, about protect, respect, and remedy, were taken fully into account, particularly in the drafting of the national guidelines for responsible business conduct. So 2 things happened. One, that in terms of process and performance requirements stemming out of the UN reporting, human rights reporting framework that Shift and Mazars and all had created many years ago, we were able, as best we could, to integrate make Principle 5 of the NGRBC's echo in spirit and letter the requirements of Pillar 2 of the United Nations Guiding Principles, the corporate responsibility to respect. And I think we were the only country in the world that added a word to this. It wasn't limited to the minimum requirement of respect. It added, we debated support and promote. It is support, but both words were debated because we believed, at least in the Indian context, that frameworks such as corporate social responsibility and sharing of a percentage of profits was looming. There was momentum for this, and to allow for it being brought into the responsible business conduct, minimizing negative impact and at the same time maximizing positive ones, we allowed for the additional word beyond respect to be introduced in the national guidelines. And at the same time, as you know, as you mentioned, we updated the entire reporting framework, which is now pending in 2-3 ways that I wanted to comment on. In the first instance, I think that knowing a little bit about each of the tremendous organizations participating today, in terms of your support for an approach that is truly a value chain approach. 2, that very clearly your sector specific knowledge, whether this be jewelry, whether it be an agricultural commodity or even a service, is required. So we see that at this point in time, there are distinct pathways for this dialogue to continue in very, very concrete terms. And let me spell these out 1, 2, 3 for your consideration. We want very clearly to deepen and to make more accessible corporate disclosure. And we want people to challenge corporate disclosure. We want better accountability in this process. Now, 1,000 companies, I've been part of process with Praxis and PIC, my ex-organization. We've analyzed each of these reports for the last 6 years, every 100 reports, the next 500 reports. And we have a huge database on the quality of reporting by the companies, listed companies that were mandated to do so. But when I was a member of the committee that tasked us with looking at 5 years ahead, where does corporate disclosure and reporting go? Then we made 3 or 4 very clear recommendations that I wish to share with you. In the first instance, I think that the next phase of the challenge will be to assess the extent to which we can get increased corporate disclosure on their value chains. Of course, this is supported by the fact that many national action plans, particularly by European countries, already require Indian companies doing business with those countries to issue, for example, a modern slavery statement to the UK government in that case, but not to stakeholders in India. So we have to read an MSA and then extrapolate what that means in the Indian context to even get a glimpse, and we haven't been able to make it mandatory yet to obtain such a statement in India. So all we have is this mandated disclosure based on the NGRBCs at this point in time. So the first recommendation of this committee was that in process terms, that we have an ombudsman that reviews and analyzes this disclosure. We've been doing it with very simple tools, with very low funding, and the best we can. And we've made a whole range of recommendations that are in the public domain. So analysis and even challenging some of the disclosures that we have. Second, that by 21-22, this FY, why? Because this mandating of the new framework is actually mandated from FY 22-23. 21-22, the current year, it is optional for companies. It's voluntary in that sense, whether they want to adopt the new format or continue with the older one. So we have a transition year for a 1.5 year period to actually do some of the things that I'm going to describe. So one was the necessity to have a thorough ombudsman that analyzes this information and makes recommendations thereof to, particularly to the stock exchange and to its regulator, SEBI. The second is that between now and a year from now, we should be able to have at least 5 sectors in business, sector supplements, if you like, or sector-specific disclosure requirements. These ideally should come, some of them from manufacturing, some from services. I believe UNDP is already supporting something in the garment sector, as also in the IT sector, and I'm confident that we will have at least half a dozen sectors based on their impact on the Indian economy, on the environment, on social and human rights issues. And these sector-specific knowledge in terms of supplemental disclosures is, I think, very clear, the linkage between the audience here today and the detail that we would want as obligatory disclosures. The second is to do with small, medium enterprise. The committee that I described I was a member of made a very strong recommendation that we should mandate non-financial disclosure based on the NGRBC 9 principles to small, medium enterprise, and beginning with medium enterprise. And in the context of companies, that would clearly mean, without any doubt, tier 1 suppliers and possibly tier 2 ones as well. Tier 3 was debated a lot, but it felt that that could be phased in maybe 3 to 5 years from now. In the first to the third year, let's focus on at least what we would be able to consider a tier 1, tier 2, where that terminology is relevant, and it may well be very different in agriculture and other sectors, but the principle remains the same. To this extent, we were able to extract a sort of a commitment that from the government to take the lead in this by agreeing to look at the role that public procurement could play in adding value to this entire discourse, meaning very clearly that contracts with government would require human rights and other NGRBC principles. Private sector would have to demonstrate its adherence to those and its participation in those. Now, if you look at the work, for example, very briefly, many of us have worked in sectors with tea and coffee, for example. We know what the government of India could do if public procurement allowed for the introduction of these. But where is the data? And the data, therefore, we argued should include small, medium enterprise in a light version of the same format that is existing, and we prepared a light version. Within both the heavy version and the light version is a mandated disclosure, and if you like, an optional one if you want to go ahead and show leadership. So for example, if you asked a detailed question about where you source from, some companies would give you numbers and regions, others would go forward and give you more details, for example, on their suppliers and how they source a particular commodity. So there would be, the idea would be that more of those questions, we'd be able to ask about 120 questions in the mandated and the other category rather than limiting it, and we'd have a room to play over the years to mandate more questions. The third was aggregate reporting. Many of you will have experienced, I think, the methodological challenges of, for example, with smallholders in cotton, smallholders with tea, fruit producers, auto ancillaries, even supplying large branded auto companies and so forth, that these medium enterprises or these micro enterprises or small enterprises, tiny enterprises, fortunately in India are clustered. So we have a cluster development approach. And the recommendation we made was that in 21-22, we experiment with certain agricultural and non-agricultural aggregates of business whose independent units are, of course, micro and small, and those definitions have also been modified over the last year or two, to come up with methodologies that can look at the ESG footprint of a massive cluster, both in environmental terms, in terms of governance, in terms of human rights, workers, labor rights, and so forth. And be able then to look at cluster competitiveness and cluster compliance rather than as individual entities, as would be in the case of large and gigantic companies. Okay. So these would be at least 4 or 5 opportunities very directly to participate in enhanced disclosure by companies, not only with the aim of helping the stakeholders we represent to participate in such a process and assess the veracity and the completeness and the accuracy of these disclosures legally or even otherwise. Secondly, to make informed choices about companies and analyze our own strategies in terms of their disclosures, and to extend disclosure from the listed companies to an audience that goes very far beyond those. Okay, so I realize I have about 6 to 7 minutes left, and I wanted to shift over to the NAP and the human rights elements. I don't usually adopt the formality of calling the agenda human rights in business or business and human rights, because I prefer really talking about us undertaking together a human rights-based approach. Just not as an afterthought or as in any jest. For those of us working in sectors where animals are concerned, certainly they have rights too. And it's not just therefore human rights, it's also non-human rights, and people working in pharmaceuticals and testing of animals and a whole range of issues to do with whaling and fisheries it should resonate with them, that it's a rights-based approach. Now in India, I think that the success that we have had if you look at a decade where business lobbied as hard as it could to never permit human rights to be in the vocabulary of a responsible business conduct framework, well, they've lost that battle. It's there in the framework, so is it in mandated disclosure. And I wanted to just flag off Pillar 3 for a moment, since we've tangentially referred to P1 and P2. I have worked very closely in advocacy efforts with our National Human Rights Commission, and I'm a member of the core group on business and human rights, which we pressured them to create just about at the time of, little before the time of the start of the pandemic. Now, the NHRC has tremendous power. If you look at what other national and state human rights institutions have and can do, then I think we should invest some energy into our own systems here. Not only the NHRC and the SHRC, but also the other commissions that stand and are created for the most vulnerable in our country, whether these be migrant workers, elderly people, women, children, bonded labor, and so forth. And we have 9 core groups for them. So I think there's a tremendous opportunity to bring the issue of business to the table to the NHRC. The core groups on bonded labor, elderly people, children are superb. They have some of the best minds in the country. They're some of the finest activists you will find, but they don't necessarily understand or are exposed to business. And our challenge is how to take their tremendous knowledge and apply it, for example, in this pandemic, to what business have to do directly vis-a-vis their own human rights. So we see a lot of capacity building, the vertical that you mentioned, a lot of advocacy with the NHRC, state human rights commissions. There are success stories with the stone industry interventions by the, as you know, in Rajasthan, by the State Human Rights Commission has led to certain progress with silicosis. NHRC has demonstrated this as well. And our core group is very well represented by civil society. And we encourage, I think, more and more of the VSOs to participate in the core group process that we can share. So with the creation of that institutional structure through the National Human Rights Commissions, there's a lot of good practice by other NHRIs across the world. And we need over the next 24 months to invest a lot of energy and time in shaking our own NHRC to do as much as it can. Now, the NHRC is not shy at all about the words human rights and has actually pushed the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, pushed in a nice way, in the sense that it has constantly reminded it that the NAP, the last point I want to end on in 3 or 4 minutes, we see that, of course, looking ahead in the next 5 years in terms of from an activist perspective, I have no doubt that the process begun in 2014 towards ultimately a legally binding instrument for business and human rights will come to be, at least for global companies. So we have 500 MNCs straight away in India who would be, whose lawyers are already looking at the implications. And if you look at the zero draft of that process as a longer horizon, now, people will argue that, okay, legally binding treaty is all we want. We don't want voluntary UNGPs. And I think this is a little, it's unfair. The UNGPs are an acknowledged motherlode of all the human rights work that is being done, informs all the major frameworks. And we have an opportunity in India. Last year, we spent 6 months during lockdown, during that worst period last year, in giving input, as you know, for the NAP. Now, although the final document is not out, I think this is a benefit. Had it been out too early, we would have not been able to harness any of the information that, for example, on migrant workers that we learned through our own pandemic and the fault lines that were clearly there. We would not have had the Supreme Court elevate labor rights to the level of human rights in terms of fundamental rights of our own constitution, and the opportunity that creates for farmers and others to challenge dilution of human rights just as a labor rights, and to challenge that this was not qualified as an emergency to be able to do so, and so forth. So I think that what has happened, the good news from 2020, is that numerous agencies, United Nations agencies, Indian NGOs, grassroots organizations, responsible business, got together as a process and said in one voice, despite their differences, let's put some solid input into this NAP. State duty, those who work on policy advocacy, directly what private sector and business have to do, those who engage with private companies particularly, and third, if the first and second don't progress as much as they should, guaranteeing as best we can access to remedy by some of the non-judicial and judicial avenues, open and new ones for new forms of work and new types of work that ILO and others have taken the trouble to describe. So we sit at the cusp, I think, of being able as civil society to, I think, congratulate ourselves in the sense that if our mission ever was united one, that we will, despite other differences, we will adopt a common framework of a rights-based demand in our interactions with global value chains and companies and the private sector and business that working with them, and we will work towards that end. Then I think that the decade ahead clearly belongs to those countries and those places where human rights becomes actually that rallying point of our discourse, because I think there is still room. There are many NGOs in India who partner with the corporate world on corporate philanthropy, on CSR. And I see as one big, huge change that we could do in one sentence that why shouldn't corporate social responsibility in India be rights-based? And how do we make that so is, of course, another discussion, but it can be done. So I think that this cusp of reporting, this cusp of human rights, this cusp of pushing this a value chain perspective are our primary challenges. I've tried to identify some of the pathways that will help us all in our individual journeys to making our businesses more competitive, more responsible, more sustainable. And from my side, I have no doubt that because I engage fortunately and so fortunately with young people, just the last 2 weeks, I've been engaging with migrant labor here in Ladakh. All of them are in their 20s. All of them are tribal boys from Jharkhand and Chhattisgarh, and they're working at 16,000 feet on our Tibetan and Chinese tense hot border. They are working here and being shunned by local populations who say they are spreaders of virus, they're responsible recruitment issues. So we see first of all, but when I sit with them and a capacity building and straight away say Manavadikar or human rights, we begin on a framework that is not dependent on charity, not dependent on philanthropy, but is dependent on enjoying and realizing one's own rights. And I think that my own experience with grassroots work in the field is that this prescription of the UNGPs that allows for all of us to address either the state duty and push the states along at various levels with various issues, directly with the private sector world and business, and those who work best at remedy, can get together. And this is our opportunity. So it's, I think, 3 or 4 minutes beyond my allotted time. My apologies, but may I take pause there and hand back to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Veera, for that, as expected, extremely enlightening speech. I have a few points to sort of put on the table, but I would like to encourage colleagues here to kindly unmute yourself and please ask if you have any question or a comment based on whatever you've heard. So the floor is yours.
Rajit, if I could go with the question.
Yeah, go ahead, Kamal.
Thanks, Veera, for the presentation. I think this was like also getting a history lesson for some of us who have been new to this space, and very glad to see, that you led the process of bringing this to the table for the government of India and also for the corporates. My question now is, if you look at ambition of Niti Aayog and some of the conversations happening now, are we talking about human rights across the supply chain beyond the boundaries of India? And I'm obviously referring to commodities like palm oil and soy and many things. Then India is the largest importer of those commodities. So are we seeing a trend or any hope that this application of human rights is applied beyond the boundaries of India, where Indian corporates are expected to protect the human rights in Indonesia and Malaysia as well?
I'm so delighted you flagged this off. One, by location, I'm just near Xinjiang. So Uyghurs and their cotton, 80% of China's cotton is from Uyghurs, and you can read what the latest commentary on that has been on Business Human Rights Resource Center, the actions that H&M and other companies have taken, and the penalties that they've paid in the local market. So yes, it is political. With solar photovoltaic cells and etc. Xinjiang have been accused by global communities of forced labor, detention. China denies some of these. So of course it's being played out in that way. I think that in India, we are equally at risk. If we have to look at children in our supply chains, if we have to look at forced labor in agricultural commodities such as cotton, we have to get our act together. And I think that if you look at also the legally binding treaty, that's exactly what it attempts to do. The boundaries between what a multinational will have to do and the other enterprises, which is us, the global south supplying, and the liabilities are being negotiated through this treaty. What would the brand be responsible for? What would the sourcer be responsible for? What would we have to do in India? Where would justice be resolved, and so forth? So I think there are a lot of questions there. But for example, another type of situation is I'm involved with a discussion that friends in a particular West African country have approached us and said, there is an Indian company flouting all our laws using the usual clout, etc., displacing people. And this is a high-flying private individual in India who has private jet, enjoys golf, etc. It's difficult to pin them down. There's not really a corporate structure. But what can we do in India to help our communities in Africa? So because of corporate disclosure, we were able to demand certain information that they were refusing to disclose. And we are on the cusp of being able to get a communication either from our ministry or from the NHRC to Indian companies, telling them that these national guidelines, where they are a higher standard in countries, are now, but the real test will be, I don't think, these soft measures. The real test will be is when that West African community, apart from international courts, can approach our NHRC for some justice, even though the crime may be committed. So these extraterritorial things are difficult to understand. However, I think in terms of not just standing in solidarity with them, we are hopeful to the Business and Human Rights core group of the NHRC to allow for such complaints for communities overseas where Indian companies are responsible to be taken cognizance of by the state here, and maybe then a state to state or a civil society to civil society discourse. Now, it's not only for penalties. I think where we lack infrastructure is in mediation. We don't have enough skilled mediation organizations who can mediate in these very difficult circumstances that require knowledge of business, mining, local communities, local law in the West, in these countries. But I think that you're absolutely right. The discussion is already extraterritorial, and we would be very happy to join hands with any party to maybe do a quick research 6 to 9 months on what Indian MNCs are actually doing, some good practice, some negative practice. And I can tell you, I think it's important, the Confederation of Indian Industry in India, CII, despite any experiences you may have had, has issued an advisory to all its 10,000 companies, 5 pages long, on business and human rights, including human rights due diligence, etc. Now, the import of even doing this from Premier National is not to be, and I know that they've had discussions with a number of Indian companies who are truly multinational to assist them as industry in the complexities of navigating, for example, human rights in countries where those human rights are not the same as the ones that we enjoy in India, because they have a different take on their laws. So how to in China, in the Middle East, and so forth. And I know that there are closed door meetings within industry discussing these things, maybe not with us, but I think we need to get into that room. And to do so means, I think, in new ways of brokers, new ways of partnerships, new ways of trust for these discussions. Otherwise, they tend to be kept really under wraps and very confidential. And then you have to tie yourself up in non-disclosure agreements to participate, which may be burdensome for some of us.
If I may quickly intervene here, Veera, thanks for that. Thanks for that intervention. I think one of the critical things that you've raised is the issue of trust, building trust, and the community that we are here is a community of voluntary sustainability standards organizations, which are providers of solutions to businesses who are confronted with complex business and human rights and sustainability related challenges. So therefore, one thing that you raised very interestingly, and I think that also creates a very good segue for our next speaker, Frank, is this whole, oscillation between public regulation and private regulation that we see across the world. And it's very clear now that it's neither public by itself nor private by itself can actually create the desirable solutions that we aspire for. It is perhaps going to be a combination of the two, which will help us, and that's probably where I think our idea of convening this conversation started from, which is, there are these mandatory, and you talked about a multilateral instrument on business and human rights, which has been brewing in the corridors of OHCR and in other sort of avenues in Geneva. There is this movement towards mandatory legislations, and the EU is one of the the EU mandatory disclosure on environmental and human and social and environmental and social due diligence is one of those initiatives. So given that, and also given that the government of India has also come with disclosures, and there is definitely a movement, perhaps one possibility would be how the VSS could establish themselves and create that trust with businesses to say, hey, we are here to support you, to help you improve your quality of disclosure, and to also ensure that you are aligned with those legislations either nationally or internationally. So I think some sort of a combination of these two is perhaps, we don't probably know the what they call the smart mix yet, but this is perhaps the smart unsmart mix that we are talking about
Okay.
in terms of moving into. Yeah, very quickly, because we want to have Frank also given this opportunity. Yeah.
Business tell us behind the scenes that with these issues, a human rights issue, the space now for voluntary leadership is so risky, and the cost of leadership is so high, and the risks, that they always remind us that if you want this done, mandate it for everybody. And to come full circle, no self-voluntary, we are told over and over again, we want a level playing field. We want a level playing field. Now, we agree. So if we want a level playing field for human rights in the supply chain, for example, they say just mandate it. We will fight clauses about what to disclose and what not in our business interest. This is confidential. We can't give you supplier's name and so forth. But we will not fight the notion of it being mandated as because I think that the momentum of a supply chain or value chain approach recognizes that these companies have outsourced everything they could. Is all in their supply chain. They cannot deny those risks. They can no longer say, I do not know what is happening. So they feel that, with exceptions, of course, that it is better to take the route, and they would be more supportive of a sensible and useful mandating of NGRBC principles 1 to 9 or elements of them. So I think given that type of notion, that suits us, because I can't sit in a room easily with civil society actors and say, well, this is all voluntary, you see, and no, elements of human rights, how can they be voluntary? So I think that with human rights, we can't say that human rights abiding by them are voluntary. Of course they're not. So my sense is to really drop the V word at this stage. Drop it, because till we use the word voluntary sustainability standard, what's voluntary about them actually, when the whole world is moving towards an accountability that is mandated either by markets, stock exchanges, banks, financial institutions, or the state. So I think, as we were able to do with the NGRBCs, some business saw red in it, but the V word is long gone. And I think we capitalize on this appetite for level playing field and mandating at least over the next 36 months. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Viraf, and I'm conscious of the time, so maybe we'll come back to Viraf with our questions. But I want to, I am aware that Frank has limited time. So Frank, given that you represent FNF and German Political Foundation, and you've been working very closely with the German the businesses, etc., and also the government. Tell us a little bit about your reading and your organization's reading of the mandatory EU legislation, and also the developments in Germany. Germany also seems to be moving into adopting some of the legislation on sustainability and on human rights as well. So if you can talk to us a little bit about how you are seeing this space evolving, and especially the relevance for India, and or any other thought that comes to you about your organization's work in sort of engaging with companies and stakeholders in India on these issues. So over to you, Frank.
Yeah, thank you, Richard. Before I start, I think I talk just another minute about the organization that I'm working for, because I think it's also good to know who says something in order to understand what might be behind it. When we say political foundation, it's always a bit difficult to explain what a political foundation is, and I think it's a rather unique German thing. So the Friedrich Naumann Foundation is actually a publicly funded foundation which is affiliated to a political party, and every political party in the national parliament gets basically public funding to run such a political foundation. And the values that these foundations stand for are, of course, strongly informed by the political parties which they are affiliated to. And the political party, full disclosure here, that we're affiliated to is the Free Democratic Party, and that is a pro-market individual rights party. And this background probably also explains what the view of the party, of the Friedrich Naumann Foundation on responsible business conduct, on human rights and business had been for the longest time. And the view was really for the longest time that if we voluntarily leave it to companies and to pressure by customers and changing customer demands, everything will be good in the end. That has worked so, and also the German government, of which the FDP actually has been part for almost half the time in Germany after the Second World War, has now really come to the point to say, okay, this voluntary approach has not worked. There was, I think, the last 3 years, a fairly big survey among companies to establish what they are actually doing to strengthen responsible business conduct. It was very German, very systematic, a very big exercise, and eventually the government came to the conclusion that this voluntary approach has hit its limits. So, which is why then over the last 2 years, a supply chain law was drawn up in a concerted effort by many ministries, and it was passed by the cabinet in March this year. It yet has to go through parliament. And quite unusually, even after having been passed by the cabinet, there were some ministries, notably the Ministry for Economic Affairs, which started torpedoing the law, even when every minister in the cabinet had said, okay, this is good to go. So at the moment, it's even a bit in doubt if it will pass anytime soon. And Germany has federal elections coming up in September, so there really isn't so much time. So there is, I mean, all parties involved say there's a strong will to pass it before the elections, but and I think the chances are still good, but there is a slim chance that this doesn't work. And if you look at other European countries, Germany is already not a front runner in the field of responsible business conduct, and this episode of one ministry torpedoing another publicly just shows again, well, I mean, Germany doesn't really, or the German government doesn't really make it easy for themselves at the moment to move forward with that. I just touch upon a few features from the law that has been passed by the cabinet to understand wherever Germany comes from. I mean, basically, it's not so very different from laws that we see in other countries, because they all basically have their genesis in the UN guiding principles. So by and large, the mechanism behind the law is the same. But then again, the devil lies in the detail, and then we have 27 countries in the European Union where the devil lies in the detail. And that's also something that really confuses companies because they think they now have to deal with 27 vastly different laws, which actually is not the case. They're not so vastly different, but it doesn't make that whole debate on responsible business conduct in the European Union very easy, which is also why now there is an initiative on European Union level to come up with legislation on responsible business conduct. So just quickly, some features which, as I said, are not so very different from what you know from other countries. I mean, companies in Germany, or maybe I first start with the scope. So because of Corona, anyway, the year from which the law will come into effect, if it is passed, has been delayed by 1 year. So it will not start in 2022, but in 2023. And in 2023, it will only start with companies that have more than 3,000 employees, which at the moment is about 600 companies. But already in 2024, the scope will be expanded to companies which have around 1,000 employees, and that is then already around 3,000 companies in Germany. These companies will, of course, have to prove that they're diligent in assessing the risk of human rights violations. They have to evaluate these risks and come up with an action plan. There is a mandate to set up a reporting structure, and the board has to appoint one board member who is the point person for all questions pertaining to responsible business conduct. There has to be an annual report on what the company is doing. There are ideas on how to fine companies which are violating these mandates. The fines, that's not really final yet. And they surprisingly are rather steep. I mean, a company can be fined, and that will not happen initially, but I mean, it shows really also in which direction the debate is going. The fine, which is at the moment under discussion, is up to 10% of the annual revenue, the annual global revenue of a company, which is quite steep. And one thing that also will very likely come, and I think that feeds into what Vries said about public procurement. Companies can be barred from participating in public tenders for 3 years. The scope when it comes to suppliers, I mean, or the scope in general, I mean, it's of course, they have to do that for their own company and for tier 1 suppliers. They are only mandated to draw up or to assess the risk and draw up an action plan from tier 2 suppliers onward when they learn about potential risks of human rights being violated at tier 2 companies. As long as they do not learn about any risks, there is no mandate for them to assess these companies as well. Virav also touched upon already on the role of courts. That was for many activists a little disappointing what the law holds. I mean, already at the moment, of course, an aggrieved person in, say, India, say, Pakistan, can go to a court and sue a company, a German company, sorry, can go to court in Germany and sue in a German court, can sue the German company if their human rights have been violated. But they can only do that according to local law. So, I mean, there has been a case of, I don't know, Kik is a rather big chain of discounted textile companies or shops in Germany, and they had a supplier in Pakistan, and there was a fire in that factory, and many people got injured, and there was apparently gross negligence on the side of the supplier, and some of the Pakistani workers went to court in Germany and sued that company. And but the current legal scenario is that they can only do that according to Pakistani law. And the case was then dismissed because apparently, as per Pakistani law, there was nothing wrong. Whereas had it been as per German law, they would have much better chances of being successful with suing the company. And many activists had hoped that this would now also come with the new supply chain law, that aggrieved persons can not sue only as per local law, but can sue German companies as per German law. But that is, well, yeah, one contentious issue where activists were really not happy with what the law says at the moment. The only thing that has been improved a little bit is that there is now a clear rule for NGOs to represent aggrieved workers from abroad. So they have done that already, but the legal scenario wasn't very clear. So there is now, at least on this part, clarity. So NGOs can represent workers from abroad in German courts. And then, yeah, there's few smaller issues also. I mean, with the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, or I mean, Ministry for Economic Affairs, as it is called in Germany, they have set up a help desk. And they created, and that's also somewhat controversial, they have created 65 new positions at the Ministry of Economic Affairs to assess all these annual reports, where also activists say, I mean, we talk about 600 companies in year one and then 3,000 companies from year two. Are 65 people looking into all these reports? Is that really enough? And there's reason to doubt that this is enough. But having said all that, I mean, it's a step in the right direction, and that's probably how it started in many countries. And it's also clear now, and companies are not unhappy with it, what the rules actually are. What we are doing really, and also, yeah, maybe to also say that, well, being a free market, or if you want to use a less nicer term, pro-business political foundation, I mean, I see that also in the debate in the party, that and also in many entrepreneurship organizations, in chambers of commerce, the debate has really shifted. I mean, now there is no debate really anymore. I mean, always few people, but there's by and large no debate really anymore on whether we need mandatory guidelines. The question, or I mean, actually now the argument usually is, okay, at least it's clear to everyone. I mean, we are pretty much also what you said. Now it's clear to everyone what the rules are. It is a level playing field. The rules are applicable to all companies. So we can very well live with that. Now comes the issue, of course, of European regulation. There are many companies which say, oh, no, there are these 27, or no, actually Britain has left 26 different national laws. That's way too complicated. We can't really ensure compliance with all these laws. And so, I mean, as I said, they are not so very different, but there is now also, well, yeah, as I said, that initiative on European Union level, and yeah, we'd expect also for regulation from the European Union to come in. Now, what we are doing in South Asia, and what we are doing also with CRB, I mean, at the moment we work on responsible business conduct in India and in Sri Lanka, but we would want to expand that to other countries moving forward from this year. Is, I mean, really the very first step, and that's by and large been our activities so far, is informing companies. And the larger companies, you feel that they are aware, they know what's happening, they're doing quite a bit already. But the smaller the company, the less they know really what's happening. But what we also want to do really is link the debate in South Asia. I believe many countries in South Asia face very similar issues, because I mean, the industries which are strong and which have customers in the so-called West are not so very different. I mean, you have in many countries in South Asia a strong textile industry. You have generally very strong labor-intensive industries. Agriculture is in all these countries a very big industry. They are, if you look at human development indicators, also not so vastly different. So they're also coming pretty much from the same direction. So we think at least there is a lot that these countries have in common. So also this effect of regulation with extraterritorial effects in Europe will have a similar impact on these countries. So there is things which these countries can learn from one another. But at the same time, and that's really not happening a lot yet, we would want to bring these voices back to Europe. Because the impact that this regulation in Europe have on companies in South Asia does not really play a big role in the debate in Europe. And yeah, I mean, our endeavor really would be for these South Asian voices to be heard, because really, I mean, there aren't strong indicators yet, but there is anecdotal evidence, at least, that some companies discontinue relationships with suppliers altogether. And then the question is also, I mean, really, is that what we want? I mean, no business coming to emerging markets at all anymore. And well, how can we strike a good balance between this mandate to diligently assess human rights risks, but at the same time still enable business between companies in South Asia and companies in Europe? Yeah, I close here. Yeah, as I said, I guess I don't have so much time, but I mean, if there are a few questions, I'd still have a few minutes.
So thanks a lot, Frank, and yeah, and it's good to hear from you about you know, the German legislation, and I, you know, as I said, it seems that many of the countries are, whether it is India or Germany or the EU, are moving into that space. So it really gives this opportunity from you know, for us to sort of you know, understand now from our friends in the voluntary sustainability standard space about how their experience on how they are sort of they are thinking of engaging, given that, and I think it's fair to say that you know, probably the way the word voluntary has been used in voluntary sustainability standards is probably misleading, because I think it's perhaps market-driven standards is much more sort of you know, pertinent and not really to be called as voluntary sustainability standards. But anyways, that's a conversation of another day. Unfortunate that Nusrat had to leave. Her jab time coincided somehow with this slot, but yeah, we will try to get her to speak to us on another time. Nandini, please make that note and send her a note of apology that we were not able to have her speak to our colleagues. But anyway, so thanks a lot. It's your time now for colleagues to ask any question, anything that you would like to ask from Viraf or whatever you've heard from Frank. So the floor is open. So, Nandini, you wanted to say something?
Question for Frank. Frank, maybe if you could tell us a little bit about the work that is being done in Sri Lanka, and perhaps a little bit about how do you see that, you know, maybe aligning with some of the work that, you know, that we want to or wish to do sort of in India. Where do you see perhaps the intersects?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you know that too. In India, we have so far focused more also on the scenario in India, on the national action plan, and what is coming in terms of coming or not coming in terms of regulation. Is in Sri Lanka, I mean, there is no NAP at the moment being drawn up. So in Sri Lanka, the focus was much more strongly regulation in Europe, and really very hands-on training for companies. What do they have to do if they have customers in Western countries? And this is also one element that we might be focusing more on in the future in India.
So more looking at trainings for companies to sort of carry out due diligences on human rights risks. Thanks, Frank.
Okay, great. Now I think we would like to move into a bit of a discussion. We have about 15 minutes left, and we would like to use this 15 minutes intelligently. So what we've done is we've created. Do we have a table, Nandini, that we've created? Okay, great. So we've created a table, simple table, which we will try to populate based on your inputs and your observations. And this is basically in line with the idea for the VSS organizations to collaborate, which is really the fundamental, the raison d'etre of this initiative. And basically, we are what we want to do here. Yeah, can you just increase the zoom in a little bit? Thanks, Frank, and Eid Mubarak to you and everybody else as well. Thank you very much for joining us. If you can zoom in a little. So what we would like to do here is that, yeah, thanks. So these are the three sort of components that we would like to get some sort of some feedback or some inputs from all of you about, based on what you've heard and or things that you are already engaged with. And there are quite a few standards here in this around the table which are engaging very, very strongly on the issue of human rights, as we've heard already. So from your own work in the organization and or from whatever you've heard, what are some of the areas on policy engagement that you feel could be explored in order to strengthen the work on business and human rights, on any of the elements of business and human rights that your organization is focusing on? Secondly, what are those opportunities to build capacity and of who and which stakeholders on business and human rights, and something that you might already be doing perhaps through your trainings, etc. But if you can highlight what would be the priorities as an organization. And thirdly, in terms of knowledge, what has worked? There might already be some examples of good practices, some ways that you have been able to engage and communicate on these issues with with the stakeholders and the businesses that you work with. So if it is possible, it will be good. We would like to go around the table really and ask each one of you. You don't necessarily have to try and answer all the three, but whichever of these three that comes to your mind as an area of importance or focus or work that is already being undertaken by your organization, if you could kindly provide that input. So I'd like to make this voluntary, but if you don't, then I'll take names and I'll put you in the spot. So please, if you want to avoid that, please volunteer and tell us about what you feel about your organization and what are the areas that you are already doing or maybe comes to your mind, top of your head thoughts, etc., etc. So the floor is now open. Mostly we will do that, but if you can also share your inputs now in the meeting, I think that will be great. We will also share this table. That's a good idea. We will share it with everyone, also people who have not participated. So that's a good idea. We'll do that. Ritu, do you want to?
Yes,
just
wanted to say from from Bonsucro's point of view, yes, we do address the standard talks about what all the standards are talking about. But like I said in the beginning, we find it we work within a framework. We do the capacity building at a very general level for all that the standard requires people to address. What I really miss, and I've been saying this now for I think for the last 3.5 years, that we really, there are two things, we miss the link between policy and implementation. I think it was a question I put on the chat as well, that there are all the policies in place, nationally, internationally, everything. But there is a huge gap when it comes to the implementation. So how do we bridge that gap? And I think for that, we need partnerships, which are extremely important. I do not want to sort of weigh one against the other, the importance of human rights against, maybe environment or the economics. I think somewhere or the other, they all cut across. There is a lot of common area there at play. And what we do at Bonsucro is that, with the limited capacities that we have currently, at least here in India, is that we have our own training material that we have developed for communication with our partners. But for me, right now, I'm looking at a project where I'm hoping that we'd be able to work on digitalization of some of the content, going forward, especially addressing some key points as far as the standard is concerned, and hoping to cover in detail the human rights and the environmental part.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot, Ritu. I think what you've done is you've also highlighted the importance of forum shopping. In terms of which is the right policy forum to engage in the policy space, whether at the national level or the state level or even the sectoral level. Like for example, sugar. The sector that you work with falls under the Ministry of Agriculture. So based on your experience of how certain risks relating to the rights of farmers or the rights of communities have been addressed, or some efforts seem to have given positive results, that could be an advocacy engagement piece with the Ministry of Agriculture. I'm not saying that that's something that you should do, but I'm just trying to answer, the point that you raised, and implementation. So first is to understand what is the right forum, and to do that shopping in terms of, whether it's the national level or the state level or the sectoral or even the local administration. And then to start and engage with them on some of these issues. So that would be my sort of quick response. But yeah.
What should I say? For the CSR part, we brought the act down so forcefully on all the companies, and this is something that I'd maybe addressed to Viraf as well. We brought it down so forcefully that you have to make it public. Your policies have to be available on your website. Everybody should know what you're working, and you're responsible for that. And that did bring in a lot of transparency. Why don't we do it for any of the other issues that we are struggling with? And I think, I mean, let's not talk about the current situation, but I really wish that these things had been brought into light earlier. They had been addressed with the same kind of a force that, you ask a corporate to put out their social responsibility policies, and that how does, where they're spending their money, you want to see everything, but what they're doing behind closed doors, you're not interested in. You're not looking at what they are, how they are responsible for.
So
Anyway.
Yeah, no, I think I think it's it's a very very important point. What Viraf mentioned earlier also is that the whole idea of this new reporting framework was to improve the quality of disclosure, quality of reporting. Some people say greenwash. I think some of us who've been looking at these reports really see a whitewash. There's nothing in it. Most of it is either not applicable or none or zero. So it's more, the quality of report is really a whitewash and not a not a greenwash. But point well taken. Nandini, just wait for a moment. Let us just get maybe some inputs from the other colleagues. I'd like to quickly move on to Archana, and then to Moshumi, because both of you, Archana at Social Accountability International and Moshumi at Fairware, you also engage very closely on these issues. So, Archana, first with you, in your work, what has been your experience on the policy or capacity building or knowledge, or is there any aspiration in any of these areas where you see that we could probably as a platform work together? So very quickly, Archana, over to you.
Okay, so Rijit, about SAI, first of all, let me share that what we're doing. We already, you're aware about the standard that we have, the international standard, and of course we have more than 1,200 companies in India who are conforming to those standards and who are certified. You know, uh, with the standard itself, especially I think some discussions are happening on the due diligence on the supply chain. So we already have these components within the standard, and a lot of focus on the supply chain, especially with respect to the due diligence. Also now we're coming up through SAI on some initiatives, and again these are sector specific initiatives. For example, we have a supplier capacity initiatives for the apparel and garment sector. And now here, what we are trying to do is again create a digital platform. And the idea here is, again, the situation is, as things are buyer driven. So we want to make this as a platform where buyer and suppliers come together, and the supplier also disclose about the subcontracting and the informal sector. So basically, the idea is to bring in these unauthorized subcontracting and also the informal sector somewhere on the maybe the last ladder of this supply chain slowly, and this will only happen with the things getting disclosed in a transparent manner. Only then that is going to happen. So this is an initiation. Again, this is a project which is funded by EU. So we're working very closely on that. And as a part of capacity building, we're already doing a lot of trainings and capacity building initiatives on all these human rights issues across the world. And as far as India is concerned, of course, a lot of Indian companies also are getting trained on that. So from SAI point of view, with the Indian government as such, even though we haven't engaged much with the textile ministry, even with this project, although I want to, but we have begun the multi-stakeholder engagement here. We have had some virtual conferences with the industry associations and especially the export-oriented associations, and we wish to kind of develop some kind of groundwork first and then go approach the ministry, especially the textile ministry and apparel, because we are working on closely on these, and they are very badly affected with this COVID.
Right.
Right. So one is that, and then I would also like to just share a few things, because some discussion happened with CSR and SDGs as well. Now, this is not from SAI point of view. I also work, I have my own foundation, which is on the health sector and also on the disability sectors. And I'm also coming up with some initiatives which are non-SAI things. But I just want to share here this on this platform because we have approached the finance ministry for the amendment in the CSR rules with that is section 135 schedule 7 and also Niti Aayog. And I have a confirmation from Dr. Vicky Paul's office, who is the head of, right now he's heading the COVID committee, but then he was also the main person on the health advisor to the Prime Minister office on health from Niti Aayog. So I had confirmation from them that they were looking into it, and they incorporated those inputs into the National Rare Disease Policy, which came up, I think, in March this year, 31st March recently in this year. And then, so the main, the amendment request was linking the Schedule 7 with SDGs. So I'm sharing this here because I think we can really do a lot there. Because all these Schedule 7 that was listed did not really address the SDGs, and that's the request we had made. So that's the reason I'm sharing this here. But otherwise, I'm also coming up with some initiatives on the health sector because, as I mentioned, I already have a foundation. I work on that, and also on the disability sector.
Sure.
So
Thanks,
that's just from my
Archana.
side.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks for your inputs, Moushami.
I'm unmuting myself. So, I work with Fairwear Foundation, and for those who don't know, Fairwear Foundation works in the textile supply chain. We have about 130 small and medium-sized apparel brands as our members who adhere to the Code of Labor Practices. We do not certify these organizations that they are 100% perfect, 80% perfect, 90% perfect, because we as an agency do not believe in good, bad, but of course a chain for continuous improvement as organizations and brands move forward in adhering to due diligence in the supply chain. So the Code of Labor Practices is the code what connects the member brands to Fairwear when they sign up as members. So what we do is at 3 levels, we work with brands in looking at how they can improve their purchasing practices, because the purchasing practices of brands have a direct impact on what the working conditions at the supplier level would be it any country of operations. So one, we together work with them in looking into what the purchasing practices are and how that can improve. We have something called the brand performance check that helps us monitor their progress vis-a-vis what they are doing at the supplier level, which is corroborated with our audits. So both the audits and brand performance check goes hand in hand. Again, I would reinstate, we don't certify. This is just a way of measuring of how our brands are moving vis-a-vis these 8 Code of Labor Practices. Second, we also have a lot of brand guidance material in terms of tools for risk assessment, tools of how suppliers can address gender-based violence in their supply chain, tools to calculate living wages, and what does it mean when you say we need to pay workers a larger wage, because in most conversations that you hear when you talk to individual suppliers or brands, they would say there is no gender-based violence, particularly in my factory, particularly in my domain. We are, we are working towards higher wages, but what does it mean when you actually work on the ground? For wages, particularly profit margins and moving to another lucrative geography is an argument that most brands use. So our tool helps see that when you talk about increasing labor costs, that is very, very minute portion of your profit margin, and that is not affecting your profitability in any substantial manner. And most of the calculations show it's less than 2%, even lesser in most cases when they talk about higher wages. So we have tools that support brand in addressing issues, particularly living wages, gender-based violence, and social dialogue in their supply chain. That is done, again, like I said, through resource material, also through training brands on a regular basis. So onboarding new brands on concept, continuous training existing brands on these issues and how they can make improvement. That's more at the European level. Also at the production country level, like if I take the example of India, we train suppliers on the issue of gender-based violence. And when I mean suppliers, it's management and workers both. Also handhold suppliers who are working towards higher wages, moving from minimum to higher wages, of how they can do it, how they can calculate their labor minute costing. Also, when it comes to gender-based violence, how risk assessments can be done, how policies to address sexual violence can be developed. So that kind of support is given at both levels, brand and suppliers, but largely the focus is on brands, I would say, because that's where a mandate is also given that they are the members of the organization. Also, to concretely come to HRDD processes, we've been using this terminology I think most organizations, we use this terminology. But what does it mean when it comes to operation? What does it mean, say, for a small factory with 60 workers? What does this human rights due diligence mean? What does all these OECD processes mean? To be fair, really not much, because these are all abstract terms for them. How do we make it understandable and also for them to take those small steps towards improving their own working conditions? So I think we're also trying to in some way demystifying these terminologies and seeing how in their own operational area, which is the workplace, it is doable and support in that process. So I would stop here, but happy to elaborate more, share more information when this table is circulated.
Sure. No, thanks a lot, Mosumi. I think unfortunately a lot of colleagues had to leave, but I think there definitely is an interest, and there are some thoughts. But I'd like to hear from Kinjal, who's still with us, and I know that Kinjal's organization, RJC, works very closely with a lot of small and medium, which have which work on, of course, labor intensive processes. So Kinjal, any thoughts on whatever you've heard, and based on your experiences at RJC, what are some of the issues at the level of policy or
thanks, Rijit.
Knowledge that comes to.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Go ahead.
Yeah,
go ahead. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Rijit. Enough has been said on this panel, and very nice, great inputs. I must say, more or less on a same line. What we at RJC, we have been always very much cautious about and focused on human rights and human rights due diligence, and that has been in our standards probably since last two revisions. And recently we have elaborated our standard, and when we have revised in 2019, we have incorporate OECD due diligence aligned approach, which is it's a need of an hour for industry, and very critical for in specific every industry, but gems and jewelry, as it's very high value industry. I must say, in recent years, the awareness of in totality has really gone up, and so very particular swift, if I may share here about last year, is that since I've joined 6 years back, I have been always focusing more on, when I talk about gems and jewelry, it's gold, diamond, color gemstone, silver, platinum metal, every aspect of the jewelry, and particularly diamond has been very much focused, and have been working. Also, jewelry have been working on this project, this human rights, very much from the day one. However, recently the gold industry in the previous year Indian gold industry in particular has shown immense interest in compliance and doing the right things in a right way. And as I've said, due diligence, OECD due diligence, we have fully integrated in our standards, where it is chain of custody or our code of practices, and all the gold industry is very well following this nowadays. Probably, in India, we have around 40 gold refiners, 40 to 45 gold refiners, and 40 to 45 diamond refiners. it's small to big refiners, but if I really talk about big refiners, there are only 2 to 3 big refiners. I can very proudly say that recently, in last 6 months, I have received membership of almost 7 to 8 gold refiners from India and Middle East. So Middle East, I may say Middle East, Dubai is much more organized in that way. But in India, when people are joining and wanting to do this, it's really something which reflects the way of people's changing mind. And even in this new standards, like modified standards in 2019, human rights has very crucial place. And we can see eventually people are more cautious about this. So that's what my observations are. And we keep on focusing on human rights.
Sure, great. Thanks, Kinjal, and thanks to everyone. I know we've gone beyond time, and we've lost a lot of our colleagues because they had other things to attend to. But I think, Viraf, if I can quickly turn over to you based on what you've heard so far from colleagues. What comes to your mind in terms of what are the opportunities for us as a group working with the sustainability standards community to sort of advance the conversation on business and human rights. One small thought that comes to me, having heard and also seen some of the work that colleagues are doing, I think the element of every voluntary sustainability standard seem to already have some sort of a mechanism or a system of either self-assessment or due diligence or transparency that they've been following in their sector for various reasons, so for various purposes, in order to assess to what extent there has been improvement in the performance, or also in terms of the impacts, whether it is in terms of as Moushumi was saying, whether it is in terms of wages, or whether it is as Archana was saying, in terms of integration of good labor practices, etc., etc. So isn't there already a lot of experience in this community on how sort of the needle can be moved towards enabling better and an improved sort of human business and human rights regime, which can be utilized and synthesized and maybe made sense of and sort of used to sort of raise awareness and also engage with either the policy or the practitioner. So I just wanted to, I mean, that's a thought that comes to my mind, but over to you really for thinking about whatever you've heard so far and what things you make of it.
I think everyone wants to go home now. A lot of people have already gone, but look, I've been listening very carefully, and I think that getting let me stick to disclosure for a moment. This is a no-end show, and people have endorsed. We are aware of the lacunae in the quality of reporting, but if we took as a task upon ourselves over, let's say, 2 or 3 years to improve the quality of reporting, no doubt, I think there are many strategies. In the case of the penalties that were earlier mentioned by our friends, look, if we can write, for example, to a SEBI and show that the company has either been inaccurate or has misled us or has given wrong information, and we can demonstrate this, they will be asked to be given a chance to respond, improve. But if not, they can be fined and delisted. This is the stakes are that high. Why should we accept that the quality of our reporting on non-financial issues should be treated with any less seriousness than financial information. So at one activist level, we should challenge some reports. Okay, take an example. If you read ITC as a company, as a conglomerate, because it doesn't mention the word tobacco. It just says agricultural products. It doesn't even mention the word health. Now, using that sort of opaqueness as a way forward, we then need to now firm up on I think, the level of detail. For example, when my friend was just speaking and talking about gold. Now, I've worked in mining, and the first thing I think about gold is, you're a mining company. But if you, in the same way, I think there is a rationale to look at an apex level, fruit. But then you will have arguments about, I need a separate standard for an apple, and it's completely different from a herb, and it's completely different from kaju or kela. To what extent? I think at this first, my approach would be to get the generic standard agreed upon by all entities, that this message, and the way to review that is if you took 10 voluntary standards today, and we took a human rights lens in terms of human rights issues, its language, alignment with this access to remedy, different aspects of a human rights reporting framework, we could assess the extent of compliance with these four. If you begin with a very specific standard, my guess is that it's better for on the ground at that floor of reality improvement for a field that primarily sells sugarcane. But I think that where we've jumped to a conclusion on a specific without having necessarily seen through a lens where we are all agreed, whichever type of fruit we are, or whichever type of metal we are. Now, I would agree that the history of aluminum and the history of iron ore and chromium and gold are entirely different. Their markets, their usage, their extraction, their impacts. But what about those common ones where they are united, irrespective of their differences? So I think in a technical way, I'd like to see an effort at, whether you are working on cotton or whether you're working on a metal, there is a common element that we would all want reporting. And then create intelligence supplements that look at the product, noting that the variation in one part of the country with the same commodity could vary because of the level of governance in that part of the country. So I think that's another variable that should be looked at. And we've talked largely, when we've said state, we've meant federal. But I think a lot of this has to now, in this phase, it's not so much NAP, the end part, but where we have to engage with states. On products that are key to their economies, whether they're forest-based or technical, and add that element to it. So just on the reporting part, I think we have this lead year and a half, but challenging it, working on the policy, extending it, and refining a sector-specific, aggregated, etc. types of reporting requires a core team with a great deal of mental effort, putting experience on the table, and a dedicated effort to see what has led to the desired impacts in the best possible way, because that's our common intent. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Veera. Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think there is also, from within what we've heard, and that's if we look at the experience of the SAI and also Fairware, and there are others as well, FLA, for example. They can all be sort of grouped into a particular sectoral, through a sectoral lens, say apparel and textile. Again, there are some of them, say for example, Forest Stewardship Council, Marine Stewardship Council, RSPO, Bonsucro. These are all natural resource-based, commodities, which again provides a lot of, can also provide some common elements, as you mentioned, whether it is on access to resources, on the way the labor force is engaged, so on and so forth. And of course, there are some others like RJC, where SMEs predominate. So again, there would also be a sort of value. So I think we get what you're saying in terms of the way forward, but this will probably need a little bit more think through and discussion internally to see how we can take this forward. Nandini, do you have any thoughts? You wanted to say something and I cut you earlier. Sorry about that.
If you may allow, Rijit, I'm sorry, Nandini, if you may just allow to just
Sure.
add a little bit here. I mean, I thought because we were running short of time at 5, I did not elaborate too much. But just I would like to say that at SAI, I mean, we are not sector specific. Of course, our maximum clients are from apparel and garment, but then our standard is applicable to any organization, any sector, and we do have industries from say heavy engineering, metal, pharma, and IT, all of them. So and across the world.
Sure.
And again, I think I had mentioned it earlier, so I did not repeat right now. But just in case Nandini and Vidaf, if they would like to know that. At SAI, the standard we are coming up with a step-up approach because we want to include the small and medium scale industries as well. Because SAI 1000 standard international standard is at a very high level for them probably. So we want to come up with a stepwise approach so that even if they are at level 1, 2, 3, 4, but slowly we encourage them and push towards them at to a greater level. So yeah, I just wanted to add this.
Sure. Thanks, Archana. Thanks for that clarification. Yeah, very well noted. Nandini?
Yeah, I think, first of all, thanks, Archana, thanks, Rijit. I had a few thoughts. I think most of it has been discussed quite a bit, but I think some of the points that stand out for me, I think would be perhaps looking really at the sector space, the collective knowledge that we have. So really, utilizing what, the experiences that a lot of these sustainability organizations have, sort of garnered over the years and see how best, we can create, a compendium of good practices, perhaps even, do a policy research paper, which can at some point be, inputted into a lot of, the recommendations that have been made in, be it the BRSR. I think Viraf talked about supply chain, sort of reinforcing, transparency, accountability within supply chains. If there are certain tools, if there are certain approaches that have worked, I think it will be important at some point to highlight those, to, have a repository of such approaches. I think what will also be probably useful is, I think, and that's again, I think, picking up from what Viraf and some of the other speakers mentioned, really about, sector-specific supplements. There might be certain challenges, complexities that are peculiar to a certain state or to a certain sector or a commodity. I think at some point, flagging these would be important. I think while we talk, the other points that perhaps I'm not sure, I mean, this is sort of thinking out loud. I think a lot of action perhaps could be done on the remediation. So I think while we're focusing a lot on pillar 2 part of it, I think there is a lot that can be done and needs to be done on the remedy part of it. I think where again I feel that the voluntary standards organizations, given their network, given their connect with a lot of the organizations, I think there I feel like there is a lot of untapped sort of potential to sort of create frameworks and methodologies, or even conduct certain short research assessments that can sort of inform policies and advisories that are developed by NHRC and other such organizations. So I think remedial or grievance addressal is something that really can be sort of looked at a little more closely. There was this talk on regional, or I felt that perhaps that is also something that can be looked at a little more closely, because a lot of these organizations, the VSS organizations, have operations in different geographies. I think to sort of distill a lot of the knowledge coming from different regions and sort of creating a multi-stakeholder platform where a lot of this can be exchanged. The free trade, fair trade, free movement of people, these also sort of come into the realm of business and human rights. And I think, sort of having different actors from different geographies sort of talk about this will also kind of, help reach a certain common understanding, or, help sort of create certain solutions. So maybe these were a few more points that I wanted to add, but yeah, I think we've got a lot of inputs from the VSS organizations. So grateful for that.
Just last one, another additional thing. I'm so sorry to come in bits and pieces.
No, go ahead.
Like we are also working with another standard called ID standard, which is in collaboration with International Organization for Migration. So this is basically with the migrant workers from across the geography, not necessarily within India. It's a international level
Sure.
migration. Right? Just wanted to let you know that as well.
Sure. Thank you.
Great.
Thanks.
Thanks a lot, and to you and all the colleagues. And unfortunately, I think we've come to a stage where a lot of colleagues have left, but that's fine. I think I think the idea was to start this conversation, and I think from the last couple of hours, some areas of for the way forward have emerged. So what we will do is we will sort of confer internally and also sit down with Viraf and Nandini and Shreya and try and make sense of what transpired from the conversation. There are certain areas where we feel we can move forward, and maybe what we will do, Nandini, is we will probably set up part 2 of this session, wherein now that we've heard from colleagues, they've given us some inputs. Maybe we can try and get some further inputs based on the table that we have prepared. And then once we get all those inputs, let us try and make sense from that and see, as I think all of us have realized, the VSS organizations hold.
Sorry to interrupt. I think I'll just leave, and maybe you can have an internal discussion. So if that is you, yeah. So thank you so much. Thanks a lot.
Thanks. Take care. Thanks a lot. So yeah, Viraf, in terms of the way forward, what we will do is Nandini. Well, we've already created that sort of a short table. We will send that across to our colleagues and to this group. We will try to get their inputs, and then we will try to see how we can take this forward. But thanks a lot. I think this was very useful as a first interaction, and I think there are certain areas which have emerged from the conversation, and we will take this forward. So thanks again, Viraf, for sparing your time and joining us for this interaction.
Yes, thanks, Viraf. Thanks for being kind enough to join us from Leh. Really, thank you.
Most welcome. Thank you.
He doesn't have any option. No, he has to join from Leh. We'll not let him go.
Yes.
Take care. You stay well. Bye. Take care. Bye.